Hiya, this is episode 32 of the Alfology2 podcast, and it will be a special episode for a couple of reasons. So the first reason is that it is a Christmas special. So we are at Christmas Day nearly, although on the date recording it is actually the 16th of December, so we are a fair way out from Christmas, but with the whole recording patterns, I didn't want to be too close to Christmas, so we're doing it 9 days before. So Christmas special 9 days before. But the other reason why we're doing this is that it's my birthday as well. At the time of recording, I have just turned 25, which I can really guarantee you is fucking depressing. As you may be able to hear as well, we are on a new podcast setup. I've been not happy with a couple of things about the podcast to date. So I bought myself a brand new spanking new microphone, which should in theory provide you a better sound quality to fully immerse you in the podcast and give you a more pleasurable experience. And I've also invested in some headphones for me so I can hear what's going on whilst I'm recording it, which does make quite a big difference. In addition to that, I have paid a man off the internet £7 English to redesign the logo. So if you refresh the podcast, you should be able to see the new logo on your screen, unless you're an Apple user, in which case you might not be able to because Apple fucking sucks. But yeah, new logo. Doesn't look like it was done on Microsoft Word. So, that's good. So yeah, a new dawn for the podcast. Hopefully better quality, or at least more consistent quality. And the other one more thing about it is that originally and throughout this podcast, it's been uploaded to YouTube, mostly with a video of me. But this time, I've been that off. Main reason that no one was listening to it on YouTube. So, what's the point in doing all the video editing stuff if no one's going to watch it on YouTube? So, it's now primarily for listeners only. I will still upload the podcast to YouTube, but just with no video. It will just have a static background and the audio added. Anyway, that's enough rambling. So let's go. Let's get into the main guts of the topic for this week. So, as I said, I'm 25 today, 9 days before Christmas. And that's my birthday every year, in case that wasn't clear. Every single year, my birthday is 9 days before Christmas, which, fucking sucks. Christmas ruins my birthday. I much prefer my birthday to Christmas. And basically, everyone focuses on Christmas when actually they should be focusing on my birthday. That's what annoys me about Christmas. And you get things like joint presents. So I get this a lot from people, and it's understandable because Christmas is a very expensive time. They'll say, "Oh, yes, we got you a present, but it's for your birthday and Christmas." I'm like, well, fuck off. This is bullshit. Because if I knew someone who was born in July, and I gave them a birthday present in July, and said, "Oh yeah, you can count that as your Christmas present as well," they'd be like, "What the fuck are you doing, man?" And I have the same attitude towards that. So anyone who gets me a joint present gets a joint present in return. That's the deal. And Christmas is not what it used to be. Obviously, it's less about the whole religious aspect of it, which I don't really care about that. But it's now obviously just a commercial holiday. But everything's commercial now because we live in a corporate dominated world. It is a bit of a weird celebration because what you're doing is you're celebrating the birth of someone 2,000 years ago who wasn't even born on that day. I don't know if you've ever read about that, but there's loads of theories about when Jesus was born, but pretty much most people, historians, agree that he wasn't born on the 25th of December. Apparently, it links in with a pagan festival. And that pagan festival is to do with the winter solstice, which makes more sense. So it's to do with it's the day every year when you the days stop getting shorter and start getting longer. So they celebrate the fact that they're not all going to die in darkness, which makes a lot more sense. I think that's called Yule. I think it's called Yule. I don't know. But yeah, basically that's what Christmas. That's what the celebration around this time of year. That's where it comes from, and that's a cool thing to celebrate. So, like there should be a celebration at this time of year, but it's just a little bit weird that we celebrate the birth of Jesus when he wasn't even born at this time, and most people don't even really sort of believe in the teachings of Jesus anymore. So, a bit weird. Uh, so, what we're going to do today is a two-part episode. So, part one is going to look at my ideas, so some original-ish, original-ish Alfology2 ideas for new celebrations that could be done. So, like some creative things that you could celebrate instead of Christmas or as well as Christmas. And the second part is going to be looking at some other sort of quite odd celebrations around the world that people actually do instead of or in addition to Christmas. So there might be a little bit of background noise throughout the recording, and mostly just people talking in the background. Basically, I'm yet to get used to this new mic, and it's so powerful that it picks up conversations in other parts of either the building that I'm in or the street outside. So if you can hear any sort of like muffled voices in the background, that's what that is. But okay, let's just do it. Let's go. Let's go. So my first big idea for other celebrations instead of or in addition to Christmas is that you should celebrate your 10,000th day of being alive. So instead of celebrating your birthday, perhaps, or celebrating the birth of Christ, you celebrate 10,000 days on this earth. Nice round number. So, for those of you who are good at maths, you'd have already worked out that 10,000 days is 27.397 years. Easy maths to do that. Just 10,000 divided by 365 plus the leap years. So, very nice and easy to do. So, I was born on the 16th of December 1994. Again, if you're good at maths, you'd have worked that one out. So, my 10,000th day is going to be the 3rd of May, 2022. My 20,000th day is going to be the 18th of September, 2047. That's quite depressing. 2047. 2047 doesn't seem right. Oh, no, 2049. I've written it down wrong. And I guess like part of the reason why we do birthdays at the moment is that they're easy to remember, so you can remember that someone's birthday is on a certain date, where if you were to do it in like thousands of days, it's very hard to work that out because you'd have to know their birthday and then have a calculator to work out when their 10,000th day is going to be. But it's 2019, nearly 2020 now. People are walking around with enormous pieces of technology in their pocket. The least those pieces of technology can do, the least your iPhone can do, is work out when someone's 10,000th day is and remind you. So, the modern world demands change, and a change in the way we celebrate the number of days you've been alive is an easy one to do. So have a big fuck off party when you're 27.397 years old. It'll be class. So that's the first sort of big idea. Second big idea is Alfology2 Day, May the 25th. To celebrate the day that this podcast came into our lives. I think I'll probably be the only person celebrating that one, to be honest. I don't think many people are going to be celebrating the Alfology2 podcast anniversary, but it is there, 25th of May. Put it in your diary. Remember to celebrate the podcast and listen to it on that day. The next idea would be pretty cool, which is Misery Distraction Day. So you get a bunch of scientists and you get them to work out what the most miserable month of the year is, and then you have a Misery Distraction Day in the middle of the worst month instead of like Christmas. So basically, Christmas is in December, which is a pretty shit month. But basically, you've already got New Year to sort of deal with the whole, we need to celebrate to take our minds off how shit this month is. So take Christmas as sort of a misery distraction holiday. Like, we don't actually need it. Well, we've already got it in January, so with New Year. So if we'd say December and January, they don't count, I reckon the most miserable month is February. And February's fucking shit. That's why we have Valentine's Day in there, because February's got fuck all else going for it. It's cold. Yeah, it's cold. That's basically it. If you live in the Northern Hemisphere, it's cold and it's miserable. Yeah, people still don't really have any money after Christmas. It's just a shit time. February's a shit month. It's too short. It's not even a proper month. Sometimes it confuses you by having an extra day. Oh, like, fuck February, man. But what I'm saying is that if we had a day in the middle of February, so like the second Monday of every February, is a bank holiday where everyone gets the day off and exchanges presents and gets pissed, that would make February seem a lot less shit, wouldn't it? Like, that would misery distraction day in February would make everybody feel a whole lot better during the year. I guess the other alternative, which I've already rejected because we're not having it in January, is to have it on Blue Monday. So there are some pseudoscientists, not actual scientists, pseudoscientists who have worked out that the most miserable day of the year is Blue Monday. So they come up with a formula of, like, how much money do people have, what's the weather like, how close is it to Christmas. And they've basically worked out that the third Monday in January is the most miserable day of the year. So you could have it then, but that's too close to New Year's and Christmas, isn't it? So yeah, fuck that off. And other countries would have to have different days, wouldn't they? So say we had it in February, like that would be no use for people in like Australia or South Africa, because fucking February in Australia is gorgeous. It's a beautiful month. So you can't be having Misery Distraction Day, the best month of the year. So, maybe you'd have to have it in August in the Southern Hemisphere. But the great thing about different countries is that they can have their own public holidays, can't they? So you can have a Misery Distraction Day in every country, which might work. Or the complete flip side of that, completely flipping that on its head, you could work out what the happiest day of the year is and have a big party on the happiest day of the year. So, say in the UK and the US, like the Northern Hemisphere, that might be like the 20th of June. Everyone's like fucking loving it. There's 50% chance there's a football competition on. The cricket's in full flow. Pims, sun. People are wearing dresses. People are wearing shorts, sunglasses. You're drinking beer in a beer garden. Everyone's fucking loving it. So we mark that with a day where sort of like everyone goes out and gets pissed. The only problem is that people are going to be doing that anyway. So that might have people are going to be celebrating it being warm and nice anyway because they are already happy. So I think Misery Distraction Day is probably a better idea than celebrating the happiest day. So yeah, Misery Distraction Day. It's a thing. Make it a thing. On the most miserable day of the year that you can think of, go out and have a fucking good time. Enjoy your life. Okay, so that's enough of my idea. So my idea is you can celebrate 10,000 days of being alive. You can celebrate the anniversary of the Alfology2 podcast. And you can do Misery Distraction Day, which will take your mind off the worst of times. So those are all good alternatives to Christmas. Or if you're a greedy fucking celebration whore, then you can celebrate Christmas and you can celebrate every day. You could be like that weirdo in the newspaper they report on every year who celebrates Christmas every day. Although I guess that then does devalue Christmas a little bit if you celebrate it every single day. And if you have too many celebrations, then every day is a celebration and you'll probably end up dying of a heart attack due to high blood pressure due to alcohol intake. So maybe give that a miss. So let's flick a bit to some existing ideas. So this is now part 2. We're segueing into part 2 of this particular episode. Part 2, as I mentioned earlier, is other people's ideas. Other celebrations around the world, which are mostly in addition to Christmas, but could also be used as an alternative to Christmas. So the existing idea, first one, is sort of like Christmas, but you have it in July. So it's known as Christmas in July. It's pretty much similar to like Misery Distraction Day. Right, there's a bit of a connect there because it's often celebrated in countries where they have their summer over Christmas. So their Christmas is like a hot day. So like the Southern Hemisphere, like Australia and New Zealand. It's hot on Christmas Day, so they don't get a day to take their mind off the fact that it's cold and dark and shit. The same way that we do with Christmas in the Northern Hemisphere. So what they do is they on a day in July, probably the 25th day of July, I'd imagine, they go out and get pissed and have a roast and enjoy themselves in the same way that we might at Christmas. So they have Christmas in July, and I think it's often observed by like Brits who are down under and miss home, so that they want to have a nice cold Christmas. But it's also useful if you're living in the Northern Hemisphere and you want to have a Christmas like you're in Australia. Go and have a barbecue on the beach in July. If you're living in America or Europe, and you can have a Christmas like you're in Australia. Except the fact that it's not going to be exactly like that because it's probably going to fucking rain if you're in the UK. But yeah, like what a fucking good idea that is. Have Christmas in July. But again, that is a little bit too. That's not really an alternative to Christmas, is it? That's just more Christmas. That's just like an extra having two Christmases. And again, you can't have too many Christmases because it devalues it. So yeah, maybe that's not the best idea. Existing idea number 2, I'm going to take you back to an episode of the podcast called The Niceness Purge. If you haven't listened to it, I'm weirdly proud of that episode. Like, it was an episode where I had like fucking nothing to talk about. So I went on Wikipedia and hit the random article button until I found something interesting. And what I found was a day in Poland. I think it's Easter Monday, where every year you can just chuck water over people. So that's a pretty cool celebration that they have in Poland, and I think it's celebrated throughout Eastern Europe. I'm not 100% sure. So it's like a big national water fight. So your dad walks down in the morning, ready to go out and do his jobs in the garden on Easter Monday, and you take a bucket of water and you chuck it in his face. Fucking class! Imagine how fun that would be. So Wet Monday, you could observe Wet Monday. Problems with Wet Monday is almost everyone's got to observe it. If you're the only person observing Wet Monday, then you're just a twat throwing water over people. But yeah, that developed into the Niceness Purge episode, which I would thoroughly recommend you go back and listen to because I'm quite weirdly proud of it. That I had an idea that Wet Monday, so where you could throw water over anyone you like, is a little bit like the film The Purge, where you can commit any violent crime that you like. And I thought that maybe you could develop that idea into like a purge, so like a day where you can do anything you like without consequences, but it's only for being nice to people or for telling them that you love them. So and that's essentially what that episode is about, where I just talk about my ideas as to how I would implement a niceness or an I love you purge on the world. So do go back and listen to that one. You know what? We're having the niceness purge. We're going to incorporate the niceness purge into this episode. So that's my 4th idea for an alternative celebration, where there should be a day every year where you can go and be nice to whoever you like, or you can tell whoever you like that you love them. So that's idea number 4 for me. But back to the existing ideas that I use. Existing idea number 3. We got name and saint days. So people have like an extra birthday every year, which is fucking class. And like this is mostly in like Europe and Orthodox countries, I think, or like Catholic countries. So like Latin countries might have the same, but certainly not in Saxon or Anglo countries. I don't think you have this very much. But it's like a name day, so everyone's name sort of corresponds to a saint, or I don't know, some sort of other famous entity with that same name. So if your name is John or Paul, you might have St. John's Day or St. Paul's Day, and you celebrate that day, and you get presents, and people say nice things to you, and all that. So it's like an extra birthday, which is pretty cool. Like, I don't see why everyone doesn't adopt that. Like, what a fucking class thing where you have like, oh, it's my birthday. I've got to wait a whole other year for my birthday and I get more presents. But who knows? Round the corner, you have your name day or your saint's day, and then you get more presents, more pints. It's fucking class. But in Romania, they have the same like greeting, the same sort of salutation for birthday as they do name day. I think it's pronounced Lemoltsani, which means like have many years. Oh, like uh, you know, like many happy returns. We'd say in English. So it's like many years, I think, and they say that in Romania for name day and for your birthday. So the two are very closely connected, which nicely segues us into the next idea. Look at that, fucking making the connections there. So Romanians celebrate St. George's Day. I think he's called Gheorghe. I think San Santu Gheorghe. I think that's how they pronounce it in Romania. If there's any Romanians listening, I'm sorry for that attempt to pronounce it because that was fucking shit. But basically, they celebrate St. George's Day. St. George's Day is the English national day. So that's meant to be our day to be proud to be English because St. George is our like patron saint or whatever. He killed the dragon in Turkey, apparently. Like what? That like blatantly didn't happen. But anyway, apparently he killed the dragon in Turkey, so therefore he can be the English saint. I don't really know how that works. But yeah, so they celebrate that in Romania. But we also celebrate it in the UK, although we don't celebrate it because the problem is that it's been hijacked by racist cunts. So racist cunts like to go out on St. George's Day and wave the English flag and tell foreigners to go home and to call people racist names. So unfortunately, it's ruined St. George's Day for the rest of us. You can't really be proud to be English anymore. Because racists have commandeered the idea of being proud to be English, which is a bit of a shame. But throughout the rest of the UK, they celebrate them quite vigorously. So you have St. Andrew in Scotland and St. David in Wales, and they have a fucking good time on those days. And over in Ireland, you have St. Patrick, who, St. Patrick's Day is a fucking big deal, isn't it? It's celebrated all around the world. And so what St. Patrick did is he killed or he drove all the snakes out of Ireland. There's like a shit ton of snakes in Ireland, and no one likes a snake. So St. Patrick comes along and he gets rid of them all. That fucking didn't happen, did it? But that's a pretty cool story. Same as George slaying the dragon, I guess. But St. Paddy's Day, St. Patrick's Day, it's not really an Irish holiday. Like I've been to Ireland on St. Paddy's Day, and I was in a bar in Temple Bar, which is like the tourist spot, but it's like the main drinking spot of Ireland. And there's a guy that's playing some music, and he says to the crowd, is anybody in here British? Is anybody in here American? And is anybody here, yada yada. He goes through all the nations, and everyone cheers. And it gets to the end, and he says, okay, is anybody in here Irish? Not a single fucking Irish person in this bar on St. Patrick's Day in the centre of Dublin. That's how much they celebrate it. Obviously, they might be in less touristy parts or at home, but it just gives you an indication of sort of how fucked up that is. But the reason why it's such a big deal is because this is known as something called the pizza effect. And I'm not making this up. The pizza effect is a thing, right? So it's where something from a country gets exported overseas, gets famous while it's overseas, and then gets imported back in as if it's like a big thing there. So the reason why it's called the pizza effect is it's like pizza, right? So pizza was invented in Italy. No matter what some Americans might think, it was invented in Italy. Italians migrate over to America, a lot of Italian Americans, and they basically start experimenting with pizza, and they start making some really fucking good pizzas in like New York and Chicago. You get some really fucking good pizzas out there, right? So as a result, their pizzas become famous, like New York pizza, Chicago pizza is like a famous thing. And as a result, pizza gets famous as a food, but it gets attributed to Italians, which is obviously where it came from. But the Italians don't really make the really good pizza. So what happened is that the Italians then had to start copying the Americans, because when people were coming to Italy seeking authentic Italian pizza, they were being served pizza that was pretty substandard. So it's called the pizza effect. So they've exported pizza overseas, it's got better overseas, and then they've imported it back in to make it seem like it's authentic. And that's the same thing with St. Patrick's Day. St. Patrick's Day is popularized in like New York by the Irish Americans, who are a fucking big deal, the Irish Americans. And then it's come back to Ireland for tourist reasons, basically. It's sort of celebrated around the world by non-Irish people, but actual Irish people have a very different relationship with St. Patrick's Day. Isn't that a fucking cool fact? Right? Isn't that fucking cool? Right? Yeah, this podcast is nothing if not educational these days. I'm absolutely educating the shit out of you. And just to fucking segue us into the last idea as well. Another example of the pizza effect is Day of the Dead in Mexico. So, Day of the Dead is where the Mexicans celebrate the death of their loved ones. So it's not when someone dies, you don't celebrate the fact that they have died. Every year they have a day where they have a huge fuck off party, and it's all about death. And it's basically, I think, to make sure that their dead loved ones have a safe pass into the afterlife. It's a happy day. It's not a sad day, which sort of changes their perspective on death, which is, it's quite a cool way of looking at it, because obviously in more Western culture, we might be like fucking sad if we had a day to remember when people died, like we do on Armistice Day or whatever. We'd be like, it's a solemn occasion, whereas they have a big party, and I think it's pretty cool. But it's an example of the pizza effect because it was featured in Mexico City in James Bond. I don't know which James Bond film it was. Might be the most recent one. So James Bond is trying to do an assassination, or he is involved in a attack, or something happens to James Bond, and it happened, and the backdrop to it is at the Mexico City Day of the Dead parade, as opposed to the Shaun of the Dead parade. That's where it comes from, isn't it? So it's Day of the Dead. So you then get Dawn of the Dead. It's like a play on Day of the Dead, and then Shaun of the Dead comes from Dawn of the Dead. Oh, fuck, just realised that. Anyway, yeah. So that happens. James Bond has a big like fucking fight in the backdrop of Day of the Dead in Mexico City. But as it turns out, Mexico City doesn't have a Day of the Dead parade, so it's a fictional parade. But in line with the pizza effect, Day of the Dead now has a parade in Mexico City because people were turning up in Mexico like, where's the fucking parade? And they said, we don't have one. They said, yeah, but I saw it in James Bond. So they're like, let's have a parade now. Right? So basically, the film James Bond has created the parade, which is pretty cool. Hey? Anyway, that's the end of this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed the new setup. I'll be working on that throughout the week to make it even better. So hopefully, going forward, we will have a nice, crisp, high quality, rich audio experience, which maybe I haven't necessarily been able to achieve today. Yeah, usual deal, like, fucking like and subscribe to the podcast on social media, all that sort of jazz, and tell your friends if you enjoy it. That's always the big thing. That's always the thing that I want you to do. Tell your friends. Steal their phones and subscribe. If you go into the Apple Store, go on all the iPhones in there and subscribe to the podcast on their phones too. Across the board, you are my promoter, so that's your big call to action. Other than that, I will say thank you, and I will leave you to it. See you in a bit. Bye.